was shortly after you leave Taiba. We were riding from Taiba, which is up in the hills over the Jordan River Valley. We had like a 20-mile downhill into Jericho, but we had to go through this checkpoint first. And it was going from Area B, in which Taiba is, to Area C, which is the desert between Taiba and Jericho. So you're basically going from one area of the West Bank to another area through desert. Why are they? What's going on? Why is it there?
Hello, my name is Stanley Heller. Welcome to The Struggle. The Struggle shown at over 30 cable stations from Vermont to New York City. On the internet at thestruggle.org. Today, New Haven's Greenexpo, Roger Waters on BDS, and more from the three activists who took the bike tour of the West Bank of Palestine. Dr. Ridge, so what do you think of the Greenexpo this year?
I think it's actually marvelous. It's so well attended. You know, there's probably well over 2,000 people that have come through today. So there's a lot of public interest in this, and I'm very heartened by that.
So you're at the Sierra Club table.
Yes.
What are some of the big issues that the Sierra Club is advancing?
The Sierra Club has come together with 350CT, which I am part of. And basically it's to kick up the argument that we need to go to 100% renewable energy within the next 10 years. We have hit a tipping point, and basically there is an environmental crisis. And as you can see while I'm speaking, you know, Hurricane Irma is bearing down on Florida and has the potential of being probably the most catastrophic hurricane to hit the Florida Peninsula in human history.
And environmentalists are saying that global warming may not have caused the hurricane, but it's making it worse.
Global warming certainly caused the hurricane because the oceans are warmer. And basically she became this huge vacuum cleaner of energy, lifting hot heat from the ocean. I worked with a number of meteorologists, and one of their observations is that the hurricane is producing 3 Hiroshima bombs worth of energy a second. This thing is a massive buzzsaw. And fortunately, she has cooled the waters so that Jose, even though it is big, will not get to the level that she has, unless he spins off and gets into untouched water that she hasn't run over.
So you spoke in New Haven recently?
Yes.
And what were you speaking about?
This is to do with the comprehensive energy strategy that the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection is considering in a rewrite. And so they have been...
You're talking about Connecticut.
Connecticut, yeah.
Right.
And so they have been touring the state, having public hearings. And there was a hearing that happened this last week at the Connecticut Agricultural Experiment Station here in New Haven. And 30 to 40 people spoke. It was a very vibrant, dynamic program, and people were, advising the panel on how to proceed with their writing.
And what was your advice?
My advice was actually a pep talk that they should take the advice of others very seriously, that technically we are out of time, that the decisions that they make, they should be brave to do so, that they should be bold, they should be considerate of what people are saying, and they need to be swift.
I interviewed Robert Howarth last year, and he said his estimate is we go over 1.5 degrees centigrade in just 13 years. How do you feel about that?
I think we'll be going faster.
Even faster?
I think there's a domino effect. I think the cascade has already begun.
At Greenexpo, I helped staff this booth for promoting enduring peace. One of our projects is to try to get the last coal-burning power plant in New England to close. It is slated now to be replaced by another fossil fuel burning plant, this one methane. And believe it or not, this will give off 1 million tons a year more greenhouse gases than the coal-burning plant. More about this at pepeace.org. Now a bit from Democracy Now!'s excellent interview with Roger Waters. As you probably know, the world-famous rocker refuses to play in Israel. Some crappy politicians in Long Island tried to use an anti-BDS law in their locality to prevent Roger Waters from performing.
As far as Nassau Coliseum is concerned, and the specific thing there, I was hoping that the state attorney, I guess, I've forgotten his name for the moment, was going to try and take the case to court and was going to actually litigate with the management of Nassau Coliseum on the grounds that they were breaking some law, because it would have given us a chance to have our day in court and for what I consider to be the side of reason and dialogue and decency and the law and the Constitution and freedom and rights and being grown up about things. I think they've looked at it and thought it was too dangerous, because if they had gone to court with us, I think there's no question but that we would have won the case, and it would have provided a precedent to stop legislatures around the rest of the United States from bringing frivolous cases in similar circumstances. So, guys, I don't know where you are, but I'm really sorry that you didn't bring this out into the open, because it bears discussion that they're attempting to take away the First Amendment rights of American citizens and others.
But you are playing Friday and Saturday night at Nassau Coliseum.
Yeah, we are, and I really look forward to it. And we will be playing, to great audiences who will completely understand as well that there is no hatred in my show. I mean, I'm somewhat critical of the current administration in a satirical and playful way, I like to think. But my show is all about the idea that if this race, the human race, is to survive even the next 50 or 100 years, we need to start looking at the possibility of the transcendental nature of love, and we have to start looking after one another and recognizing our responsibility to others, which is what BDS is about.
So, Roger Waters, you wrote recently this op-ed piece for the New York Times headlined, "Congress Shouldn't Silence Human Rights Advocates," and this is about the proposed bill, the Israel Anti-Boycott Act. So could you explain what the act calls for and what your own experience has been with it?
Well, yeah, as I read it, I haven't read the complete draft, but and I know it sounds ludicrous, but it's true. There is a bill before Congress, S-720, which seeks to criminalize support for boycott, divestments and sanctions, which is a non-violent international protest movement to protest the occupation of Palestinian land that's been going on for 50 years. And they want to make it a felony to support BDS, as far as I understand it, with criminal penalties that are, in my view, absurd. Somebody like me, for instance, if the bill was passed in its current drafting, would be subject to a fine of between $250,000 and $1 million and a term of imprisonment of up to 20 years for peaceful, non-violent political protest on behalf of basic human rights for beleaguered people, which is absurd, clearly. When you put it like that, you think, well, that's ridiculous. Why would Congress even be using any of their precious time in the legislature to even discuss such a thing, contravening as it does the First Amendment to the Constitution, which is one of the basic rights that American citizens have, freedom of speech to say what they believe.
Well, explain your own involvement with BDS. How did you come to learn of it and then to support it in the way that you have?
Well, I many years ago, in 2006, in fact, I was doing a tour and I was asked to play in Israel, to do a gig in Tel Aviv. And I'll try and tell this very quickly. And I started getting, and I agreed to do a gig in Tel Aviv, and I immediately started getting emails from people saying, are you sure you want to do this? And then I was told about BDS, which was started by Palestinian civil society in 2005. And I engaged in a dialogue, that famous word, with these people and with Palestinians. And they convinced me that I should cancel the gig that we were going to play in Tel Aviv. But as a kind of act of compromise, I moved the gig to a place called Neve Shalom, or Wahat As-Salam, I think it is in Arabic, which is an agricultural community where many different religions, Christians, Jews, Muslims, Druze, all live together. Their children all go to school together, and so it's an agriculture. They grow chickpeas for a living, and so we did the gig there outdoors, and it was a huge success. 60,000 Israelis came. No Palestinians, of course, because they're not allowed to travel, but which is kind of the start of my story. At the end of that gig, I stood up, and they'd been hugely enthusiastic, the audience, and I said, you are the generation of young Israelis who have the responsibility to make peace with your neighbors and to figure out this terrible mess that your country has got itself into. And there was complete silence. It was like, I saw these 60,000 kids all looking at me going, what is he talking about? This is not in the script. So anyway, I went back the next year at the invitation of UNRWA.
The United Nations agency?
Yes, exactly. A lovely woman called Allegra Pachea, and we went all over the West Bank. We didn't go to Gaza, unfortunately, but we went everywhere else that we could think of in the West Bank. And I was flabbergasted. I'd never seen that kind of repression in action. You know, the roads that the Palestinians aren't allowed to drive on, and they're showing me the development of the settlements. This is 10 years ago now, 11 years ago now. And so, and I went and talked to people in the refugee camps, and I determined when I left there that I would do everything that I could until there was some kind of justice for the people who live there. It's to help them, which is why we're here today. So the fight goes on, but I'm happy to say that it's a fight that is being won by BDS. This is why there are people beginning to picket my gigs, and they haven't done for the last 10 or 11 years, but now they are, because they're beginning to panic, I think.
Roger Waters, founding member of the iconic rock band Pink Floyd.
Very chilling. about the lack of response to Roger Waters' simple plea to the young people at his concert. So many are infected with racism. It's exactly why things just won't get better with time, and why there has to be boycotts. For more, go to bdsmovement.net. Last week, we had the first part of our interview with 3 Jewish Voice for Peace activists who went on a bike tour of the West Bank of Palestine. We left off as they went to Taipei.
So Taipei is significant because it's the first brewery in all of Palestine for beer and wine, and by a family, a Christian family educated in Boston at Harvard, who created a beautiful hotel that we stayed at and the breweries. The married into a Greek or Syrian, she's Syrian or Greek, the wife, Greek. And just total hospitality everywhere we went, just welcomed, and we received a tour of the brewery, we received samples of their beer. And
how was the beer?
Excellent. Really good, and it's being sold now in the Boston area, so you can ask for it. I also gave the information to the Wine Thief here in New Haven, so the more people ask for Taipei beer, they'll maybe be able to get the supplier to bring it here to New Haven.
Do they have any problems? I mean, I'm thinking beer must need water, and
Yeah, so having a business like that in the West Bank is a non-trivial exercise. As you said, beer needs water, and water is severely restricted to Palestinians. On per capita, the settlers get access to 7 times as much water as Palestinians do, and so that's a problem. But perhaps an even more serious problem is that they're trying to distribute the beer, and they're selling it internationally as well as within the West Bank. In order to get to the port, they have to go through checkpoint, we were told that the cost of getting the beer from Taiba to the port, which is in Israel, which is maybe 30 miles, 40 miles at the most, is more costly than transporting it from the port to its ultimate destination. That there's so much red tape and so much delay, and truck drivers having to be paid for staying at the checkpoint overnight, and goods spoiling, that's what happens. And really the question is, why is that happening? You know, what is it about beer that's coming out of Palestine that is so problematic that it can't just go through and get sold?
I understood that Israel doesn't even allow it to be sold through their ports, that they have to go to Lebanon. They have to transport it out through Lebanon, which is a longer drive, longer waits, and it's a capricious, arbitrary checkpoint. They don't know if they'll be there for hours and hours or just at, a half hour. The wait is unpredictable. And it's about Israel not wanting to see Palestine succeed in any way in having a viable economy and their own independent country.
now speaking of checkpoints, can you describe one? I mean, here, I think after Taiba, when we did the preliminary discussion, there was a particularly bad checkpoint.
I'm not sure I can talk about the particularly bad one. I was thinking of was the mobile checkpoints, which seemed to sort of be at, sort of expected places, but the guides would not know for sure if there was going to be a checkpoint there. And then they would, if there was going to be a checkpoint, they would line us, up to sort of carefully go through. And the best part about the checkpoint was always Ellen's greeting the soldiers in Hebrew and having them be shocked. And we got through them all. I'm not sure. Do you have a story about a particular?
No particular checkpoint, no.
The difference is that these were checkpoints that curtailed traffic, because I've seen the individual checkpoints where people wait online and go through this very narrow cage, like a cattle prod cage, that just is the width of your body, and you wait there for hours. We didn't need to do an individual checkpoint, we went as a group with traffic. I think those are different.
So the particular one that you were talking about, Stan, is shortly after you leave Taiba. We were riding from Taiba, which is up in the hills over the Jordan River Valley. We had like a 20-mile downhill into Jericho, but we had to go through this checkpoint first. And it was going from Area B, in which Taiba is, to Area C, which is the desert between Taiba and Jericho. So you're basically going from one area of the West Bank to another area through desert. Why are they? What's going on? Why is it there?
Controlled by Israeli and Palestinian. It's the shared roads.
No, I think the B is the shared, and C is completely Israeli controlled.
We also had the experience as we were riding that the guides would always warn us. Mostly we were on Palestinian roads, which, although they're not as in good repair, they're very safe and very friendly, and there were always kids running out and wanting to high-five you, which is really hard if you're tired and riding a bike. And I lost my train of thought.
The difference in roads. The roads. I can pick up. So on the Palestinian roads, our guides, Nidal and Mohanad, were able to, for example, if there was a crossroads, hold the traffic up so the bike group could go through, essentially take care of our safety, of safe passage. And on the shared roads, they have no authority whatsoever. They have no right to, or to tell the settlers who are using them what to do, and so we really had to be ultra careful. And the traffic tended to be faster because the roads were in better repair. So we just had to be a little bit more careful on those roads than we did on the Palestinian roads.
So you're talking about desert and Jericho, and that brings to mind Dead Sea. So did you go in the Dead Sea?
We did. When I was in Israel when I was 18, and I don't remember the Dead Sea being so built up like everything is today in the United States, with concession stands and bars and showers. I remembered this remote, kind of romantic, pristine, beautiful place that was, but I also have heard that there are different gates or entrances to the Dead Sea, and some are Israeli only, and the one we were was shared, I guess. So it might have been that I went at a different part of the Dead Sea. But what was even more amazing to me was the Jordan River, because it was filled with so many pilgrims who were coming to the Jordan River to receive christening, I guess, or is that what it's called? Baptism. And many from African countries, and little babies were being placed in the water 3 times with beautiful chants and prayers, and costuming, dressed in white with all these gold beads, and it was. And then there were a group of Southern Americans, it seemed, and Spanish. They were singing. There were Spanish prayers going on in American and African, and the Jordan River is where we were was very narrow, and it was.
It's not the Mississippi.
Oh, no. So that was just inspiring to realize what a sacred place it is for so many people. The Dead Sea didn't have that feeling of being sacred. It just was it was very buoyant, a lot of salt. What was beautiful is there was one woman in a wheelchair whose family took her there and was helping her, and she could float out of her wheelchair. I'm very therapeutic for her, I'm sure. So that was beautiful to watch. And then all these African women were bare from the waist up going into the Dead Sea. That I remember. That's their bathing attire.
And then Bethlehem, is that what
before we leave
follows?
Jericho. I wanted to say one more thing about Jericho. Well, when we arrived at the hotel in Jericho, we met 3 cyclists who were part of all Palestinian, who were part of a larger group of, I think, between 30 and 40 folks from around the West Bank, but especially from around Ramallah, who had ridden from the West Bank across the Allenby Bridge into Jordan, and they had ridden all the way down to Aqaba, which is in the southern part of Jordan. So it's another example of
Of our next trip.
another example of our next trip, right?
It's a bit longer, I would think.
It's an example of, of life.
They were very excited to see
They-
us,
yeah,
though.
yeah,
They're very excited to see international travelers bicycling around the West Bank.
I think that it was the main feeling that anytime anyone met us, they were so glad to have an international presence, just that we could see and we could hear and we could taste what was their life and return home and share it with people. That's all they ever asked us to do, was tell what we heard and share what we've seen.
And then to Bethlehem in a very unique hotel, the Banksy Hotel.
We didn't actually stay in the Banksy Hotel, although I got the shirt there. The Banksy Hotel opened just a couple of months before we got there, and it's called the Walled-Off Astoria. It's right directly across from the wall, and there's a store next door to the Banksy Hotel that sells you paint in small amounts so that you can join the graffiti on the wall. So it's very...
What's the name of the store?
Oh,
Walmart.
Walmart.
Wall-Mart.
That's great.
It's not, obviously not part of the chain.
Another, after we had done some of our sightseeing in Bethlehem, we were back at the hotel remarkably with a couple of hours free, which almost never happened. And so Shelly and I decided we were going to look for someplace we could walk to, and we get out Google, and nearby is Rachel's tomb. So we get the Google walking instructions to Rachel's tomb, and we walk through this city and the neighborhood. It's all very nice. And we finally arrive, and Google lady says, your destination is on the left. And on the left is the 30-foot concrete wall close to where we'd been at the Banksy Hotel. And it's like, oh, Rachel's tomb is on the other side, and Google Maps doesn't know that we're not getting to Rachel's tomb.